Hi, this is Amanda, Chris's nutrition coach. I help him keep his belly from actually looking like a peach. But first, check this out.
We are beyond broke. In fact, we were so broke that we were on the every other month car payment plan, just enough to not get them repossessed. The car that we weren't paying the payment on stayed in the garage. So that's how broke we are.
Hey, did you know that statistics show that every single one of us will experience some kind of financial disaster or financial emergency in every 10-year period? That's why I'm bringing on my guest today, Steve Valentine. Steve is an expert when it comes to failure. Steve's going to talk about a time where he literally lost everything. They went from making tons and tons of money to literally being over $1 million in debt, and how he was able to climb out of that and have success, even more success today. So without further ado, let me bring on my good friend, Steve Valentine. You're really going to like this.
All right, Steve Valentine's coming on the show today. Excited to have you on, Steve. We talked about how I was going to introduce you here, so right. I'm just going to roll with it here. You are a real estate entrepreneur, and you're also the host of the new podcast, Purpose Driven Real Estate, which we are going to talk about. But to be honest with you, I didn't want you to come on the show to just talk about real estate. There's so much more. I think anybody who's in business, who is thinking about starting a business, who has been in business for a while, definitely going to benefit from this talk we're going to have, because I've learned so much from you, just with you sharing how open you are about what you went through in life to get to where you're at. But before we start, just why don't you say hello and introduce yourself?
What's up, everybody? Chris, I'm so excited to be here. I've been listening to your podcast for a while, and we were introduced by our good friend George Lawton, and it's been a lot of fun just hanging out with you and getting to know you and your family. And so I'm excited to be here and kind of share this with your audience.
So yeah, George Lawton, episode 42. We actually recorded here in your office, the same office. Right. This looks a lot better now. We're in a nice big podcast studio. But yeah, this was about a little over a year ago. We had George, and George introduced me to you. So one of the things, Steve, that I think that most entrepreneurs either understand or they're going to soon understand is failure is not an option. It is actually necessary for growth.
Agreed.
I just was reading a stat recently that 90% of entrepreneurs will fail within the first 3 years. 90%, right? It is that's why whenever I hear somebody that says, I'm thinking about starting a business, or I'm year one of my business, I give them the utmost respect, because I know how hard it is, right? Yeah. Because either they've gone through some challenges already, or they're going to hit some major challenges. And just in our business too, we've hit some major challenges. We had some issues with Facebook ads. Google changed its algorithm a little bit, which hurt us. Just different things happen that you don't see coming, and you're like, this sucks, I might give up, right? That's why 90% fail. So you've had a huge setback in your career. I think as we go through it, huge might be an understatement.
Yeah,
but
huge is an understatement.
Yeah. What was life like before you had that setback? And just kind of walk us through how things were going with you guys.
Well, when you're in real estate, you're third generation, and you end up getting into the business just as the market takes off. So you're like, this is easy. This is no big deal. It's always going to last like this. I got my license in 99. But you moved to 2003. So now I'm 4 years in the business, and now the market is like hotcakes, dude. You could put a for sale sign in a front yard and have 18 offers and make 20 grand like that. It looked so easy, but you never experienced anything like we were unprepared for in 2006. And so as it was so easy, you started acquiring more things. You start acquiring more debt. When we finally failed completely, it really sucked and it really hurt when my parents and I had to split our partnership because of the failure in the business. And part of that failure was we took our eye off the ball. When it came down to real estate, we started getting into ancillaries, which was plumbing and painting and construction, which I didn't have any knowledge of. I was 26. I didn't know anything about it. I knew how to sell houses. We just thought it was a good idea because it played off of the business that we were in. And what ended up happening in 2006 when the market crashed, nobody was watching the financials close enough to realize that the real estate business was supporting the 75 employees that we had, the 22 fleet vehicles we had, all the expenses. So when real estate started bringing money in, we went downhill quick. And we're talking when all the dust settled, we lost our home. I had 2 toddlers, wife, and everything came crashing down. And it was to the tune of $1 million worth of debt. So I think we owed American Express $300,000 at the time. And we had lost $1 million worth of cash and assets in that time trying to keep everything afloat.
So this is a family-run business. So going back, you said that it was you and your family, your mom and dad, right, in the real estate business. I mean, the first big blow is splitting that off.
Yes.
Right? That can't be easy when you tell mom or dad, like, we're going to do our own thing. We're splitting off.
No, it was hard. It was really hard. It was a hard failure and a hard thing for me to do as their son, to go, I need to make some changes for my family. And, anybody that's in a family business is really hard, especially when you have the generational differences. And that was one of the things where we had generational differences, and it was really, really hard to make that decision.
And then after that, that's when, I remember 2006, I think they started talking about it, but right around it was the end of 2007, you start seeing this snowball effect that people knew was going to be bad, but it became even worse than they really expected, when just the foreclosures started happening. So you were in a business where what kind of, there's so many different things in real estate. What was your niche inside real estate?
My niche was just the traditional residential real estate. So it's just, buyers, sellers, working through that process at that time.
And during this time, there's nobody buying and selling houses anymore. Everything's going to foreclosures and short sales. So, I mean, is this like you had a feast and then next month famine, and that's when it started? I mean, was it that quick?
It was almost as quick as a light bulb, because at the time we were, before we split, at the time when the market started to tank, I mean, we were probably $300,000 a month in expenses. And all of a sudden, nobody's renovating their homes, nobody's doing things. You have all these things. So it happened quick, like overnight, you could almost see it. And I almost remember a house that we put on the market when we didn't get multiple offers on it. You're looking around going, what just happened? And nobody saw it. We weren't smart enough to look at things and see like what is coming. And you look at probably the biggest mistake we made back then. Like I said, we took our eye off the ball by doing construction stuff, is we should have been investing in real estate. We should have been flipping houses back then. We should have been doing some of that stuff that we knew. And instead we were messing around with other stuff that we had no knowledge in.
Another thing that I've learned too, we've talked about this, is so you took your eye off the ball, but you also are doing so many different things now. You're just adding and adding and adding and adding. And I say this quote all the time on the podcast, but what happens is you become, what is it? A jack of all trades, but a master of none.
Right. Or
what they say is, you're an inch deep and a mile wide, right? You're just barely sticking your toe in these 20, 30 different niches inside real estate. Is that kind of where you found yourself?
Yeah, because the best thing I ever did, which for any entrepreneur out there, when failure happens, you have to look at why it failed. It may not always be because of something you did. It may be, the situation, the market, something, but what could you do different? No matter what you do, so that you learn from it. A failure, nobody becomes successful without failure. Period. You just you don't get further by not failing, because you have to learn from that. You don't
success
learn by
is
being
a horrible
success.
teacher.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you think it's easy, like I did in 2003 and 4. It was easy, so I didn't have any failure. I hadn't ever over leveraged myself to fail. Well, now I had. And so you have to go back and do it differently. So when you look at the portion where we made the biggest changes was inch deep, mile wide, it was probably a great idea to maybe own a painting company, but it wasn't for us to manage. It was a good idea to put in a folder and go, hey, when I find the person that can actually run this company and I can manage or financially view it, then it might be a good idea. But until I find a person for that idea, I'm not going to do anything with it. And we did the reverse. Well, all we need is a painter and a truck, right? It's not that simple. It's not that simple on the business side. One of the best things that I learned is that in real estate, you can have a ton of different ideas. You can have a ton of different business ideas. Like I'm sure you do with all the different things you do. You're like, that looks like a good idea. It's like shiny object syndrome.
Exactly. Yep.
But if you can take shiny object syndrome and go, that's a really good idea for some time in the future when maybe I have a partner to put in there, maybe I have the financial backing to do it, but it's not to be done all at once.
So I think a key takeaway here for listeners is this, and I've learned this the hard way as well, is shiny object syndrome. When you're growing, when you're an entrepreneur, you're building your business, there are so many cool ideas that are going to come across your table, come in your mind.
Right.
And you're going to feel like if I don't act on this idea now, it's a missed opportunity. I have to act on it. And this is just going to rinse and repeat itself. And all of a sudden, you're going to find yourself doing 30 things in your business, and you're not doing it at a high level, right? You can't because you just don't have the time or the resources. Especially, so if you're starting off, write all these great ideas down. I stick them in an Evernote file and come back to them, but you don't have to act on them. And I think that's a big mistake that I made in the beginning is I was like, all at once. I'm going to start a blog. Oh, I'm going to do a course. Then I'm going to start a podcast. I'm going to start a TV channel.
Right.
Oh, this is great. I'm just going to keep adding and adding and adding. And all of a sudden you hit burnout. Yep. But you're burned out on doing lackadaisical activities. You're not even doing good activities because you don't have the time.
Right.
And so the discipline it takes to say, gosh, this sounds like a great idea. And I know we could generate more income with this, but we're going to have to put this on hold right now.
Yep.
That's tough. But I think that separates the people from the 90% who fail from the 10% who succeed.
Right.
Is doing that right there.
Yeah, I think what happens though is you see shiny object and you think it's a way to instantly generate income rather than doing the slow and steady. Stay here, get this moving the way it should, and then you can look at the next shiny object when you have some time and you're moving. It's kind of the way learning from what we did. It was the way we rebuilt in the real estate business, and how we rebuilt Valentine Group was we had a big team back then. We were doing all this stuff and it was all over the place. And I started realizing, hey, you know what? I'm going to start out. It's going to be me. And as I want to build, I didn't want to build the traditional real estate team where you're a lead generator and going through that piece. I wanted to build the business on relationships, which means I had to start looking at hiring people and talent to support each piece that I didn't want to do anymore. So as I wanted to get my accounting taken away, we hired someone to manage, the company's finances, and then somebody to manage over the sales process. And so we started looking at talent to support me doing the next thing. So all those folders were separated out, and it really helped me go through the process of getting to where the core things that I love to do. And I've hired people that are specialists in the other areas of my life.
Okay. So let's go to the point where you lose your house. You're $300,000 American Express, $1 million in debt overall, did you say?
$1 million over debt.
$1 million in debt. So where are you living when you lose your house?
So we get foreclosed on, and at the time, this was before it was popular to do. And so we moved into a rental, and thank God my sister was a property manager because I don't think anybody would have rented to us at that time because we had barely any money. We're living up at 67th Avenue in Happy Valley in this rental, and we are beyond broke. In fact, we were so broke that one month we were on the every other month car payment plan, just enough to not get them repossessed. And the car that we weren't paying the payment on stayed in the garage. So that's how broke we are. It broke my heart. I remember December of 2008 or 2007, my wife getting a job. This is heartbreaking for a man that feels like failure is just the worst thing you possibly do. As my wife walks out the door over Christmas to go wait tables. And I was literally doing sprinkler jobs and lawn maintenance, anything kind of similar to your story. You were doing pools and doing all this stuff to get out of debt. And we were doing it to try to stay afloat. And I was trying to figure out, well, I need to get back into real estate. How do I do it? I was in freeze mode, scared to death. Like, what am I going to do? And I remember being on a plane and actually writing a suicide note at that time.
Wow.
Thank God I didn't own a gun because I was so distraught at what had happened with my family, the relationship, my wife, my kids, all the people that I failed, the employees at the time. It was a miserable time in my life. And I wasn't sure what I was going to do, to be honest with you. And that letter, I still have that letter. It still sits there in the what I've learned from what I screwed up file. And I try not to go back and revisit it because it was a really dark time.
So yeah, you have two young kids. You're in a rental house. Your cars are getting repoed.
Yep.
Your wife on Christmas Day is going to wait tables.
Yep.
And this was a successful real estate family just a few years earlier.
We were the number 2 team for realty executives internationally. In fact, in 2005, we sold 700 units for I don't even know how many millions of dollars at that time.
And then just a couple years later, you're at rock bottom.
Yep.
Like have $0 left.
Zero.
The next question is how do you go from this lowest moment, this low point, to saying, I need to get back into what I know, which is real estate for you. But for anybody, it could be like, I need to get back into business. I need to get back into taking action. What was it for you that allowed you to go from rock bottom and actually start taking those steps forward into your business?
Faith obviously played a huge role for me. We were going to CCV at the time. We had just actually switched over to CCV, so that was a big thing. My wife never stopped believing in me. No matter what, she never blamed me for where we were at. She never commented. She never took that, and we've seen a lot of that in when divorces happen, things like that, you know, somebody gets blamed for a failure. She never blamed me, and she says, you know what, we always did these decisions together, so there's no one to blame. That always gave me the reason to keep moving on, that I wasn't to blame. So I had to get the blame out of my own self and start looking at, okay, here we go. This is how we're going to do this. So first it was trying to put, kind of like on a plane, I had to figure out how to put the oxygen mask on myself, which is I'm going to go to work and I'm going to figure out how to get some leads, and I'm going to do some, you know, back to basics, knocking on doors, doing, you know, calling friends, just figuring out what to do. I remember taking a short sale listing, which I knew nothing about at the time. It was great because it was generating sign calls. And that was open houses, sign calls. Like, just go back to the basics. My dad used to say that, you know, just go back to the basics. We started generating income, and I started figuring out, very similar to, you know, like when you do the budget stuff, you know, all the guys, they talk about drawing the line in the sand. And man, can I just tell you, the creditors calling on a daily basis was ridiculous. So we drew the line in the sand and said, this is what we need to live. So I need to go out and figure out how to generate one transaction a month so we can pay our bills. Everybody else will just have to wait. It was this huge blessing in 2008 when we were invited to take on a REO account, which is a real estate owned, bank owned foreclosure account with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. I remember lying through my teeth about saying yes. So the broker called. She's like, do you have $10,000 and would you like this opportunity? I'm like, yeah, I got 10 grand. I didn't have two nickels rubbed together, but I was going to figure it out. That was a turning point, but I had to make it through that first year. And it was just being driven that I learned this. I spent a lot of time looking back. What could I have done different? What do we need to do different this time? And how do we get back to where we were? The other thing that really carried me through is character integrity. It was about everybody that we borrowed money from needed to be paid back and made whole, because probably $300,000 of that debt was from people we knew. It was friends, family, people that had borrowed against, and I needed to make sure that they were whole. And so we started off with little things. You know, I called them and I went through the process. I'm like, this is what's happened. Can't pay you. Some of these people we owed $100,000 to, that we paid $25 a month just to say, I'm trying. So just give me some grace. So there was a lot of people that we went back to that encouraged me, didn't throw me under the bus, and really helped me drive to get where we are and where we were going at that time.
Yeah, because the debt you owed wasn't just to the bank, right? It was to friends and families and neighbors and people that trusted you when things were going good.
Yes.
And that's a tough thing to do. I think you just said we were sending $25, you know, to somebody we owed $100,000 to. But you got to, people listening, keep this in mind here. When you're parking a car in the garage one month at a time so it doesn't get repoed, $25 might as well be $25,000.
Yep.
I mean, it's everything, right? I mean, when your wife's going to wait tables on Christmas, and a couple years earlier she was
at home with her kids
in the real estate business.
Yep.
Yeah. That's one of the reasons we've had this story before. I wanted you to come on and share that, is because, you know, maybe people aren't in those exact same shoes yet, or maybe they didn't live those exact same shoes, but we've all gone through failures. I remember I've shared before many times in this podcast when Andrea and I, we didn't go bankrupt, but when we literally took our checking account to negative and we had no money and maxed out our credit cards,
right,
I was scared to death.
Yep.
And $25 might as well have been $2,500.
Yep.
And I remember thinking, okay, what can I do right now to generate income? For you, it was sprinkler repairs and lawn care, right?
Yep.
And you got to think, this guy was a big wig in real estate, and now he's out mowing lawns. Not that that's a bad thing, but you don't see many real estate agents doing that.
No.
You know, you don't see anybody doing that in business.
You'd be embarrassed.
Yeah, it's too
to
embarrassing
go out and do that.
I remember feeling the same way. Is I told my wife, I'm like, I want you to drive me around the neighborhood. I have a Google Earth map, you know, printed off. I know where every pool is, and I'm going to just knock on the door and just say, hey, you know, and I'm thinking, man, is this beneath me? I'm like, no, what's beneath me is remaining broke and not doing anything about it.
Right.
What's beneath me is staying broke and deciding, okay, this is it. I'm going to quit. I'm going to go back to, you know, whatever. I'm not good enough, or whatever it might be, getting those negative thoughts. So how long did it take you, Steve, to go from rock bottom, renting that house, almost getting your car repoed, wife waiting tables, $1 million in debt? How long did that take to navigate through that?
It took 4 years.
Okay.
So 2008 to 2012, and it's always a great memory because it was December of 2012 when we were able to buy a house again.
Okay.
we had gone through the process, and I always remember this. You'll love this because I know you're a spreadsheet guy. I had this spreadsheet that was 8.5 by 14, and it was 2 pages deep. And those were all of our debts. And so we were doing like the snowball thing. Well, we got to pay this person this much, and we got to do this. And we had some attorneys involved, like, our second mortgage came after us, our HELOC did, for 140 grand. And so we finally got them to settle up on some stuff. But we went through and we just constantly knocked things out and went through the process. We never filed bankruptcy. We never went through it because we really wanted to make sure that, hey, we borrowed it, we screwed it up. How do we get back? The scary thing is we were making really, really good money over those 4 years. And I could have very easily just like, nope, I'm going to take my money and go do something else with it. I don't owe these people money, and walk away and do that. But I think that that's one of the reasons that we've been successful, is just because of the character and integrity that we established during that time. And it was also, you look at that time, and sometimes I believe we go through things not because we needed to go through it, but so we could be prepared to help other people go through it. I remember in 2008, so this is when it was getting really bad, and especially in the real estate community. Because if you didn't have REOs or weren't doing buyers or investors, something like that, you were just dying. Somebody nominated me for a broker agent of the month. I was going to be on the cover. There's going to be this article. My choice was to use that article to tell people that failure is okay, and that you can be more successful because of your failure. And so basically I opened up to the real estate community and said, I really screwed up, and this is where I'm at, and this is how I'm getting out of it. And I got messages and agents calling me in tears. And then I realized, you know what? Part of me going through this was because people needed encouragement, and they needed to know that it was going to be okay on the other side, because it's so scary when you first start going through it.
Especially when you first start going through any kind of mess, you're looking at everyone else and you're like, why am I the only one that's failing? Well, what I've learned, and what you probably did here, is there are a lot of people who we think they are just, doing everything excellent, but you peel back some layers and there's some dark things going on that maybe they haven't surfaced yet, or maybe they haven't told anybody about. It's like that Jerry Maguire memo. Remember when he wrote that memo and right? He's like, yay, that's like kind of what your article was.
Yeah.
Like, people relate to, understand that.
Hey guys, I just wanted to pause and take a second to say thank you from me to you for listening to and supporting the Money Peach podcast. Without listeners like you, this show definitely would not be possible, so thank you. The number one question that I receive is this: Peach, I just don't know where to start when it comes to my money. So many of us out there are living paycheck to paycheck. We have tons of debt. We're not making any headway. We can't save any money. We want to go on a freaking vacation where we pay cash for it. Oh, and let's talk about retirement savings and kids' college planning on top of that, right? Where do you start? Well, that's why we created the cash flow formula. The cash flow formula is the same system that Andrea and I used to pay off $52,000 in debt in only 7 months. And the best part is it's 100% free, meaning we are going to send you the free tools and a free lesson on how to set up your own cash flow formula. So to get started, go over to getcashflowformula.com. That's getcashflowformula.com. Once again, head on over to getcashflowformula.com to get your free copy and your free lesson on how to get started the right way. All right, guys, now back to the show.
One thing I would say that I really like about what you do, Steve, is you are really good at identifying needs in the market and how can we fill those needs.
Yep.
And so I feel like there is definitely a lack here locally in Phoenix, but definitely a lack of taking what your knowledge is in the real estate world and teaching others, teaching in the real estate business, or maybe people who are thinking about getting in, or maybe people who are investing, want to be on the outside, more of on the passive side. And so you are doing that through your podcast that you guys are starting off. Tell me a little bit about that, how that's been working out.
So the podcast was started because, I don't know, everybody else was doing it, so I figured I should do one. But I started listening to podcasts and they were super motivating. And then you start realizing it seems like it's all the same people and it's everybody doing interview style and not a lot of the educational podcasts. So I look at what we're doing, and we've built the real estate business a little different in what we've done. And we're very solution based and very solution oriented for our consumers. And I love the investment side of real estate. Part of it because it's a non-emotional transaction. I want people to see it, and I especially want the industry to see it, because it's the stats are that only about 5% of licensed real estate agents actually invest in real estate, which it's their career.
Yes.
And they don't invest in it. And you know why? It's because they don't know how. They don't understand how to do it. They don't understand some of the creativity. That was one of the greatest things that my dad left me as a legacy. Was my dad went through the business 40 years. So he went through all the worst markets and he stayed in real estate. He never did sprinkler jobs.
Yeah.
But he learned how to be really creative in those times. And so even in a great market, there's ways to be creative. There's ways to find great deals. There's ways to invest and increase your income by being more solution-based and relationship-based. Now teaching through the podcast is, I've got a co-host, Paige, who's 26. We've gone through the process where she's learned. She bought her first place. She's now actually in the process of renting that one out and moving into her second purchase at 26. So we're actually going through the process of different stories, different things we've done in order to help the consumer to understand that there's a lot of different things you can do, and to help the real estate community understand that, hey, there's ways to increase your income and there's ways to plan for your future by investing in something that you know, and you have to do it the smart way. Because let's go back to 2006, and this is one of those big things I learned. And we've had the investment conversation. And nowhere will you ever tell me or tell you or factor in when you buy real estate that some of your return is based on appreciation. Because appreciation is luck. Appreciation is, people did it in 2005 thinking, well, I can buy and invest in the appreciation. They're doing negative AM loans because agents were selling them based on, well, it's just going to appreciate until it didn't, until it went backwards. So you're looking at cash flow and you're looking at your long term, and there's a number of different ways that we've actually gone in and put it into a wealth building blueprint and go, okay, so you're 25 and you want to get to passive income at 55. These are the steps it's going to take to get there. And hey, by the way, don't look at the markets when they're going up and down. Just be steady. It's going to be rented. The rents are going to go up and down. Some years are going to be better than others. You're going to have repairs. So it was the educating process, and people they just don't understand it. So it was passion for me to get into it and go, I've done it. I've done it for myself. And now I want others to see the benefit of it and what it does. And that was the whole purpose behind it, calling it purpose-driven real estate, was there's purpose behind every piece of real estate that we buy and sell and rent and go through it. I always go back to the house that I rented for 5 years during my downtime. Thank God that investor was set up well. He had a great house that I got to rent, and it was my home. And when we put tenants in our homes, I want it to be their home for as long as they need it to be their home. And that's one of the reasons that I want to educate that, because everybody goes through stages of life. You're going to be a tenant, or you're going to be an owner, or you're going to be a landlord. And so there's purpose behind everything that we do. And it's, how is that purpose going to help you fulfill your passive income and some of those other things that you want to accomplish in life?
Steve, we're going to put links in our show notes to your podcast. So wherever you guys listen to a podcast, just go and search purpose-driven real estate.
Yep.
Or go to our show notes and click the link, and it'll take you right. We'll open it up in all your different feeds. So Steve, it's pretty cool to have somebody come on to talk about their failures, right? Everybody likes talking about their winning. We've had a lot of great guests on this podcast that's come on and talk about how they're doing this or doing that. It's really neat, but sometimes I think it's a good reality check where we sit down and we say, no, that's not always like that, right?
Sure.
I mean, every successful person has had a failure. Sometimes they don't like to talk about it. Sometimes they do. And so it's really cool for you to come on, share your rock bottom moments, absolute rock bottom moments. But also, I think it gives people hope that, 90% of small businesses will fail within the first 3 years. So how do you become that 10%? I think you just got to be tough. I think you have to be tough and have to be calculated to realize that the failure isn't happening to you, it's happening for you, right?
Right.
So what are you going to learn from this? And maybe I asked you this already, but I'll ask again. Are you better now than you were in 2004 as far as your business?
Absolutely. I will tell anybody, and I know that people have heard this story before, I wouldn't change anything about the failure. Mm-hmm. Yes, it was painful to go through, but I think it would have been more painful to have never gone through it, because it set me up for how we've grown, how we've done things differently, how we've restructured our businesses, how we've built our relationships with people. And there's so many things that I learned going through that time. One of the key things is your relationships. I've seen some stuff recently, which has been interesting, where these people that come out and then people call them the carpet, they're self-made millionaires. Mm-hmm. I don't believe you can be successful without key people around you and without key relationships, because I think those people will pull you up. They'll kick you when you need to be kicked, and they'll be completely honest with you. When I look back, as I learned some of the good stuff, from my dad, and some of the stuff that maybe could have been changed or I saw needed change, and it was relationships. It was relationships with business partners, with just really cool people that you get to thrive and drive with. He was very much like, I don't want to have friends that are competing. And now I've got a lot of my friends in real estate. I sit in this building next to one of the most successful real estate agents in the Valley. We're partners on a lot of different things, and we hang out and we have good conversations, and there's enough business for all of us to be successful. And I think that's so key to us being successful, is always learning and always having those key relationships.
It's so much of not what you know, but who you know.
Right.
And those relationships are key. Last question I have for you, Steve, is I'm a huge fan of books. I feel like there's just so much information out there. It's very inexpensive learning in these books. People always ask me, Chris, what books are you reading? So I'm going to ask you, if there's one book out there that you could recommend to somebody right now, what would it be and why?
Ooh, so many good ones recently. I really love Story Brand.
Okay.
By Donald Miller. Mm-hmm. That's been a huge thing for our business, because I think in real estate, so many people want to play hero. Mm-hmm. The agents do, versus making their clients the hero and telling stories. And we've really introduced that into our business. That's really probably one of the better ones I've read recently. Actually, a really good book if you're in a rut or success, which I've actually just got done reading, is, I won't say it unless you tell me it's okay, is Un-F Yourself.
That's fine. Yeah. Yeah.
It's great to listen to, because the guy's from Ireland, so he's got that little bit of twang, and he's really good. And it really talks about getting yourself out of your own head and getting out of your own way. So if you are in a rut or you feel like it's a great book to go through. We
won't say it, but it's Un-F Yourself. We'll put links in the show notes to that. Somebody else has recommended that book. So cool. We'll have links to those books in the show notes. Donald Miller's book, I personally read as well, and it's true. So many businesses out there want to make themselves the hero, and what you should be doing is making your future customer, your avatar, the hero. When they come to your site, they should feel like, oh, that's me, not that that's you.
Yep, absolutely.
Steve, thank you so much for coming to the show. This was great, and looking forward to your success with your podcast.
No, thanks, man. I appreciate it.
And just like that, we wrap up another amazing episode of the Money Peach podcast. All the show notes, the links, anything that Stephanie and I talked about can be found over at moneypeach.com/session108. That's moneypeach.com/session108. Special thanks goes out to my producer, Steve Stewart, and my assistant, Kayla Sloan. Without them, this show would not be possible. We'll see you guys next week, same time, same place, for another amazing episode of the Money Peach podcast. God bless and take care. Boom,